Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Today is Sunday, November 30th, 2025. Um, Thanks for joining us today. Um, we're going to speak a little bit about meditation, maybe a little bit about karma, cause and effect, and practice a little bit, and then we'll have questions. If you have questions, we can answer them if we have anything to share on the topics that you ask about. First, let's, as we always start, any Buddhist practice always begins with setting our intention, making aspirations, and we use a four measurables prayer to do that in this class. May all beings have
Have
happiness and the
and the
causes
causes
of
of happiness.
happiness. May
May
all
all
beings
beings
be
be
free
free
from
from
suffering
suffering
and
and
the
the causes
causes
of
of suffering.
suffering.
May
May
all
all
beings
beings
not
not
be
be
separated
separated
from
from
the happiness
happiness
that has
that has
never
never
known
known
suffering.
suffering.
May
May
they
they
rest
rest
in
in
equanimity,
equanimity,
free from
free from
attachment,
attachment,
anger,
anger,
and
and
aversion.
aversion.
So that four measurables prayer, um, more than just making this wish that everybody's, happy and not suffering and, is actually very much tied to the view of Buddhism. One of the most important parts of Buddhism and aspects of Buddhist practice is that we're trying to see reality as it truly exists, not solely from this very subjective point of view of an isolated individual human being. By saying those words, you're kind of acknowledging that view, that ultimate reality is completely interdependent. All sentient beings are interdependent and actually exist on a, quantum physical level as one giant energy field. Now that you may be unable to understand that on an intellectual level, it might, okay, that does make sense. That does make sense on an ultimate level. But operating from that in our day-to-day life is another story. And Buddhist practice and the methods that the Buddha taught and that the teachers of that have continued in his lineage taught, they're methods of really trying to realize that by realization. In Buddhist teachings they often talk about realization. Realization is not just an intellectual understanding of concepts, but an integration of these concepts and as a way of seeing reality from that point of view always. That becomes, the way we see the world and the way we interact in the world. That's also called enlightenment. Um, so when we begin a practice, any Buddhist practice, and that first component of making aspirations and setting our intentions, it's much more than just, you know, a wish. It truly is about a, a method to really, you know, move on this path of Buddhism, of understanding, reality and understanding what we really are, which is enlightened beings. We all have Buddha nature. It's all inside us. You can't destroy it. You can't give it away. You can't make it more or less. What you can do is clear away the obscurations to that. And that's why Buddha taught. He taught 84,000 teachings. And they're all teachings about understanding, and realizing our true nature. And these are very difficult um, concepts, to integrate, but we make small steps on the path. That's why there is a path. meditation fits into this by allowing us to start to work with the mind, so we can start to see what exactly these obscurations are. That's the first, really the first part of this experiential, path that we have to go on as Buddhists. Meditation allows us to kind of settle the mind so we can start to see how it's operating. So we can start to see, okay, what's preventing me? What's preventing me from seeing my Buddha nature? What's preventing me from, letting this Buddha nature be integrated into my daily reality, if you will? So meditation is really like the first step. When we start to sit, settle our mind, so we can start to get a handle on how these obscurations come into play, how they prevent us from, interacting with the world in the way that we really want to. We could see how habitual patterns are really ingrained in our mind, ingrained in the way we behave and ingrained in the way we respond to to other people, how we respond to the world. I think a lot of people, meditation has become a very popular word that you hear, and a lot of people feel, well, I need to meditate, but not, maybe think you need to meditate because you're stressed out. You have a lot of anxiety, you have a lot of worry. And those are all legitimate reasons, but I think it's important for us, because we really approach meditation as an aspect of our practice in Buddhism and the path of Buddhism. And I think it's important for us to share that with you, that meditation is very much a part of this path and a part of uncovering this Buddha nature and it's a path to liberation, in that respect, and enlightenment. And when there's the official, if you will, the ceremony or whatever, or vow of becoming a Buddhist, you take refuge. It's called refuge vows. You take refuge in the Buddha, right? Meaning, we kind of say what Buddha taught and who Buddha was as someone, that I trust because these teachings make sense to me and I want to follow this path. The Buddha, the Dharma, which are the teachings, if these make sense to you and you want to follow this as a path, and the Sangha, which is, your fellow Buddhists, which includes your own teacher, because this path makes sense to me and I want to follow it, so you're going to take and what are you taking refuge from? Basically, you're taking refuge from these very obscurations in your own mind that cause you to suffer, basically, suffer under the yoke of disturbing emotions that cause us a lot of problems. I think it's important to understand that as well. What does it mean to be a Buddhist? It's like to say, okay, I hear this path and I understand it, it makes sense to me, and I want to pursue it. Victoria is going to continue this discussion, and then we're actually going to sit together and meditate for a bit.
Very important point that Michael is discussing. In Buddhism, we operate with this notion of the two truths because that kind of is our ultimate condition. We can say truths, we can say also natures. We have the relative conventional level. and we have an ultimate level, not a more. There is conventional and ultimate level. They're not separated. They're only separated as an intellectual kind of a thing. But obviously, all the conventional things arise, appear, continue, and cease only because of their ultimate level. On the conventional level, we may look at the light in the sky and see and think this is a star. And science will tell us that that's actually light of a star that died 1,000,000 years ago. And what we are experiencing is this kind of a journey of light or a delayed reaction of our sensory apparatus with aid of something that can probe deeper, like the Hubble telescope, can tell us our senses have deceived us. And that's the relative level on which we usually operate all the time. Almost exclusively 100% of the time we operate only on that level. On that level, we live on the basis of labels, of accepted conceptual structures, entire webs of these kinds of structures. And meditation is that which is the only kind of tool. It's like the Hubble telescope to look at the deepest of the deep, to find reality. Even conventional reality has to be found through meditation, because as Michael said before, if we just take someone's word for it, like if we just take Buddha's word for it, and say, these illusory things that cause my suffering, they're just illusions because they're based on this notion of the self. And if we analyze what is this self coupled together, am I a parent? Am I a citizen? Am I a person who works in a cubicle 8 hours a day? Am I this being who sleeps half of my life? Do I exist to drink, to eat, to buy, to sit on the telephone, look at the internet, and the rest of my available non-sleep time to sit at some meaningless job? Even for that, we need meditation. We need meditation to look and understand beyond the labels and concepts, the interdependence. We have to understand that I cannot sit in this house without the hands of countless others. I cannot be in this body without my mother and my father, without my grandmother and my grandfather, without my great-grandfather, etc., etc. I cannot sit in this body without the elements of, the 5 elements: space, which holds everything, the fire that creates my digestion, the water that is my blood, etc., etc., the solidity that is my bones. To all these levels of interconnectedness, the micro and the macro structures, this too we have to take into meditation, because and meditation is the only place, is the only tool, is the Hubble telescope of getting away from conceptual structures where we simply believe and take things for granted, and then we just operate within those conceptual webs. We never ever question. We are not capable of penetrating through the thickness of all of that kind of stuff. It is through meditation that we can see that we are swimming and living in the world of appearances, like thinking it's a star while it's just the light of a dead planet. It's in meditation that we understand how all things arise based on other causes and conditions. And when those causes and conditions fall apart, when it's time for the elements of my body to disintegrate and become something else, my death will come. And so it is in meditation, not just ordinary consciousness in the world, that we observe and understand these cyclical kinds of things. It's also in meditation that we understand interdependence as the foundation of relative reality, of conventional reality. All these things that surround us, ourselves included, are things that arise from causes and conditions surrounding these causes. Only then can we arise. Like my mother and father had to have met under the right circumstances, had to have some kind of at least a moment of, a passion and love, etc., for, for my body to arise, for, my existence to be possible in this particular lifetime, in this form. This we take into meditation, and this is where we understand beyond the conceptual web that we are affected by everything and we affect everything else. This is where we cultivate bodhicitta, because based on our meditative experience of profound understanding, truly profound knowing, direct knowing of causes and conditions, and being interconnected with everything and all the time. There's not a moment that passes. There's not a past moment, future moment, or present moment where I am not interconnected with the world and all sentient beings in it. And so this is where we learn that we need to practice bodhicitta, because that is the conventional truth, is that we have to practice bodhicitta, because only stupid, ignorant, mind can lead us to think, why do good people like, myself get bad things? Because if we truly, truly examine in meditation beyond conceptual gloss of this and this is like this and this is like that, and, et cetera, in meditation, when we discover truly what it means, karma, cause and effect, a mind that has meditated and has penetrated knows karma, cause and effect, knows that all things are interdependently arising through their causes and conditions, and they becoming in turn other causes and conditions, such as my children, the way I interact, etc., etc. As my parents were my conditions, I am the causes, and we are the causes and conditions of our children. We are always interconnected. And also, it is only through meditation that we can see the empty aspect of everything that arises and ceases. Interdependence is another word, is another way to understand impermanence and, of course, emptiness. Impermanence is a part of the causes and conditions of arising. Something fell apart, something arose. It'll stay, remain, and it will cease. Impermanence is a part and kind of nail of all the structure. Impermanence is a thing that we understand as structural, integral part of causes and conditions of interdependence, our conventional reality, to remind ourselves where our mind has to turn to important things and not be just wasted on internet and telephones and eating in restaurants and drinking and sleeping and all this kinds of stuff that we do to entertain ourselves, and to really kind of not allow our mind to ever examine on a deeper level, namely to look at its own nature. And, it is in meditation that we understand the interdependence, and we start to see emptiness. Because in Buddhism, emptiness is not like an empty grocery bag or empty dead space or anything like that. In Buddhism, it means emptiness of inherent existence. It's the same thing as saying nothing is created in and of itself, nothing is self-arisen, nothing is self-sustaining, etc., etc. That's to say emptiness is to say interdependence, because without emptiness, things could not arise interdependently, and they could not be created by being connected to millions, infinite, there's no number, infinite causes and conditions. And that is how all things arise. That is what interdependence is. It is in meditation we truly start to understand that, and our mind can shift toward really placing the focus on, well, what is this ultimate nature? The two natures with which we live, our relative conditional existence and our ultimate nature, the Buddha nature of the mind. We can turn to that in meditation. We, of course, have to go through a gradual path to first quiet down this ordinary conceptual mind, this dualistic structure of conventional reality. We have to learn how to look beyond saying that light is a star in the sky and go deeper and deeper and deeper, and to kind of use the Hubble telescope of our, of not our mind that just labels and separates our reality into subject and object, but our mind, the nature of mind that is always present and illuminating the sky of where concepts and relative things can arise. Those levels, we call them Mahamudra and Dzogchen. Those kinds of teachings obviously should be practiced by all, should be obtained through teachers and teachings, through connecting with an authentic lineage. Michael and I just attended an amazing teaching, really truly indescribable, with Kendra Lodrataya Rinpoche in Arkansas. We spent some time studying and then, receiving teachings and then meditating on these teachings with Rinpoche, with direct pointing out of the nature of the mind, the ultimate kind of teachings regarding the ultimate nature. And that's where, in those kinds of teachings and in that kind of meditation, is where we cultivate wisdom. Looking at the interdependent nature of all things, we cultivate bodhicitta. Looking at the non-arising, non-ceasing, non-abiding nature of awareness, we come face to face with wisdom. This wisdom has the name of emptiness, or timeless knowing, emptiness, awareness, which is the basis of all things, But even when we look at the interdependently arising nature, our conventional level reality, we already can see with our analytical brightness, we can see with that kind of intermediary tool of mind. The sad thing is that in English, there are very few words for mind. Mind is mind, right? Whereas like in Sanskrit and of course Tibetan, that's based very much on the philosophy of the Buddha, but Sanskrit has 52 terms for the mind. It's very difficult to create the different gradations and really kind of like show the path of the evolution of awareness, up until you get to the point of where you're no longer dealing with anything that arises, stays, and ceases. We're dealing, with Mahamudra and Dzogchen. We are turning the mind upon itself. We're not looking at objects in the world. We're no longer looking through our dualistic conceptual mind, even on its kind of higher, more analytical component, but where the mind is really facing and looking at its own nature, where it's the only method to know Buddha nature. And that has to be really done under the aegis and guidance of a qualified master, because only a master who has already seen and mastered knowing this nature, who can speak from the basis of that timeless knowing awareness to your timeless knowing awareness, to your, the light of the sun can speak to your little flashlight in the dark room, of afflicted mind, of our ordinary mind. Those teachings to be undertaken with, a master of that kind, like Garchen Rinpoche, Kendra Lodrataya Rinpoche. There are lots of masters with unbroken lineages. We have to seek them out, and we have to ask them for these teachings. We have to petition and have the fortune to connect with them. But Nothing starts without us petitioning and asking and pursuing this on our own. But these two natures, conventional and ultimate, can only be really understood, known through meditation. And once again, even though this is kind of like a very brief, in a nutshell, very superficial conversation of what Michael and I just discussed, these things are to be taken on with true masters and teachers, not us. We're just students. We're just here to say these teachings exist, they're available, please go out and find them. But just to bring once more the point of with what Michael started to say, is that meditation is is the only tool that is available in this world that can really shine the light, can bring us face to face with those two natures, conventional and ultimate. There is no microscope, there is no exterior kind of a tool, because all of these tools are only modeled on our mind looking at objects. There is nothing out there, there will never be anything out there that can bring us to face with reality. Reality can only be discovered through meditation. Of course, in Buddhism, we're always talking about view, meditation, and conduct. Those three things are inseparable things. View is where the master, who's already come face to face with this ultimate reality, understands interdependence beyond, any kind of argument that can beyond not being able to explain it to you with complete and 100% clarity and light, with out of total knowing, where you can start to have a little glimpse of that knowing. These are not just like some conceptual structures, believe this, do this, etc. We have to use meditation to know things for ourselves, because if our knowing is just like some kind of a conceptual thing, our view is just some kind of a concept, we just took it for granted what the Buddha said, we said, yeah, I like it, this is suitable, I enjoy this. If we don't have direct knowing through meditation, it's useless, it's futile, because it's so unstable. It is, and again, it's just based on this kind of dualistic ordinary mind, which itself is just is an empty thing. It doesn't exist, because it's cobbled together like any other conglomerate. It comes together, held for a minute together, and then falls apart. So meditation, please understand that meditation is like the Hubble telescope. It's like it created the Hubble telescope. So what do I need to say? What wisdom mind does, and meditation is the only way for wisdom to see wisdom, when the mind turns on itself and knows its own nature. That's what meditation really is. It knows the two truths, it knows the two natures, it knows reality, the conventional and the ultimate, and it knows them as one. I mean, that's what, timeless wisdom is. And, please pursue these things. First examine for yourself, analyze, read, hear teachings, analyze, and then please go and meditate with the master under his supervision. Learn how to do it on your own, by kind of, taking, your wisdom. Remember, you have Buddha nature. Bring that into your own daily meditation practice. Learn how to master your mind by not having the mind always like be a monkey, always concerned with this and with this item and with that thing in the world and with this thing in the world, with all that kind of stuff. Learn how to control your mind, learn how to control your body, but then ultimately please go and seek the guidance of a master, because we can only be convinced of something, when we experience it directly, it's very hard to experience it directly without first seeing someone else show it to you and having done it for themselves, And that's really, just to take out meditation out of this ordinary banal way of using it, it's like using Hubble telescope, to clean your toilet, it's a real not true use of something that we innately possess, we innately have. And just to understand that we have the sun inside us. We don't need to, to use it as a flashlight. It's the sun. So, and that's what meditation is. It sheds that level of light onto, onto all the dark corners of everything. And ultimately, it's the only means to access the truth. And so it should be cultivated. It should be, habituated through meditation and, under guidance of a great master. Because thinking that, oh, I'm meditating, oh, I have the view, in the meantime, just kind of operating on this low level conceptual kind of, unexamined, ignorance. That, we should not allow ourselves to succumb to these beliefs. We have Buddha nature. We have to discover the diamond and, not feel like we're beggars all our lives. Thank you.
Okay, so let's sit. For those of you who are new, we sit cross-legged on the floor. We use a cushion to raise our, basically to keep our hips in line or above our knees. That makes it more comfortable, easier on the back than just sitting cross-legged on the floor with nothing else. Some people can do that, and it depends on your flexibility and your body. If you can't sit cross-legged on the floor, you can use a chair. If you use a chair, make sure your back is straight and the same thing applies. Your hips are either in line or above your knees and your feet are flat on the floor. Our backs are straight, but not rigid, so you're not using all this effort to hold your back straight. You're just it's kind of just like gently erect, naturally straight, We use that analogy of the guitar string. This applies really to the whole body. So it's like this alert tension, just enough tension in a guitar string to make a nice tone. If it's too tight, it doesn't make a tone, and if it's too slack, same thing applies here. So the back is straight, the shoulders naturally straight and upright, not pushed back, not hunched forward, but just naturally upright. The arms are relaxed, and either you can have them, your hands open, resting on your knees. Some people touch the ring finger to the thumb. You can just have them open on your knees or down on your knees. Or sometimes, if your left hand is open and the right goes, and then you hold that and, the thumbs touching and just resting that in your lap. The head is slightly tilted, kind of the same angle as the bridge of your nose. And the gaze, in this class we meditate with our eyes open, but we rest the gaze lightly on whatever is in front of it. So whatever follows this angle of view, you rest your gaze upon it, not intensely focused, not cross-eyed or spaced out, or just resting the gaze on whatever's in front of it, not paying too much attention to it, but also not just like unfocused. The mouth is closed, but the teeth are gently apart, and we're going to breathe through our nose unless you can't because you're congested or whatever reason. And the tongue rests where the upper teeth meet the roof, the front teeth meet the roof of the mouth. So that's the pose, the posture. And let's just take 3 breaths from this posture. And the breaths should be just natural, not deep breaths, not shallow breaths, just the natural breaths. And we'll just do 3 from that position. So that takes care of the body aspect of meditation. And as far as what we're going to do with our mind, I hear constantly people constantly say, I can't meditate. A lot of people have this preconceived notion that for some reason they can't do this. Everybody can sit in this posture, whether it's in a chair or on the floor. Everybody can breathe, and everybody has a mind. All we're doing is focusing our attention on our mind and what's happening in our mind. We're not trying to stop thought. We're not trying to just focus on something in front of us and all our attention in this one place. No, we're just, it's like we're shifting our view from the normal, how we look at everything externally. We're focusing that attention internally. We're focusing our attention on what our mind is doing, what thoughts are arising. And when a thought arises, what we do with it is we notice it. With this attention on the mind, we notice that we're thinking. And once we notice we're thinking, we're not analyzing the thought. We're not saying it's good or bad, or it's big, it's small. We're just noticing a thought has arisen. It could be anything. It could be fear that the world's going to end tomorrow. It could be what I have to buy at the grocery store in an hour. It could be I'm uncomfortable doing this. I don't like doing this. Just notice what it is. And then we go back to the breath, which means we focus on where this breath is moving in and out, where the nostrils meet the upper lip. Focus our attention again on the breath. And then another thought's going to arise, because that's what our mind does. It thinks, it has cognition. You just go notice it again and apply the same thing. Oh, a thought has arisen. I'm thinking about the sound outside of an airplane. Back to the breath. And this interplay will go on, and that's what we're doing. We're not saying it's better or worse if there's longer stretches where we don't notice a thought. You may not notice you're thinking, and you are thinking. That's okay too. Just when you're aware, keep trying to focus your attention on what's going on in your mind, what's arising. And once you notice you're thinking, go back to the breath. Let's begin. As we begin, I'm going to explain the second technique. Okay. You're sitting in your posture, relaxed gaze. I notice a thought has arisen. My thought is, am I making sense to you? To the people listening. Back to the breath. Once again, I notice a thought has arisen. I have to take a plane later today. Back to the breath. Focus my attention here. The second technique we use is just imagining the mind as a completely infinite, spacious, stainless, clear blue sky. Settle into that spacious, calm blue sky, limitless blue sky. Settle into that as the nature of your mind. Now I notice a thought has arisen. It's raining outside. The thought I imagine as a cloud that has arisen out of that clear blue sky. It comes from that clear blue sky. The thought comes from mind. The cloud comes from sky. I notice it, and then I watch it dissolve back into the sky from where it came. The same way a thought dissolves back into that infinite, limitless mind from where it came. The true nature of the sky is not the cloud. The nature of the sky is limitless, calm, infinite. Same with the mind. And repeat whichever technique you use. If you're feeling physical tension, you need to adjust your posture. Just do it and then settle back into it. Relax back into it. Back to the breath. The thought you notice dissolves back into the sky-like nature of your limitless mind. Back to the breath. You may notice you've been lost in thought, one thought leading to the next for quite a while. That's okay. Just notice that you're thinking. Apply the technique back to the breath. Watch the thought dissolve like a cloud, dissolving back into the sky. If you need to take a deep breath, do it and then return to the natural breath. Okay, excellent. All right, we'll go to some questions for the remainder of session today. Why did you choose Buddhism? After exploring some spiritual paths, because I just felt there were some things that I needed to know. It just made the most sense. To be really honest, that's really about it. It just seemed like um, there were a lot that interested me, a lot of other paths, but on the a lot of other they were more philosophical rather than practical, and Buddhism offered a really practical path to be able to practice it. And as it revealed itself more and more, it kept making more and more sense. Would you please speak on how what we say at the beginning and end of practice connects to setting an intention? Is there a concept of saying the right words to the point of expecting memorization? Um, this is where, what Victoria was talking about following a teacher, a master, as like, yeah, we incorporate the teachings of the Buddha, which is now handed down through, our teachers, of saying, it's not wrong, what's wrong or right. It's it's having confidence in the path that you choose, that these teachings, like I said, they make sense, they resonate. So you want to put the Buddha's teaching into use and into action, and setting an intention. There are probably diverse prayers that are used to at the beginning of Buddhist practice to set intention and make aspiration. The four immeasurables of one that we use um, is what one that we've been taught. Uh, Expecting memorization. I mean, that's a very short. Male beings of happiness and the causes of happiness. May all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all beings not be separated from happiness that has never known suffering. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. It's very short. It's pretty easy to memorize. And if you can't memorize it right away, just, write it down. I think it's important to use the teachings authentically rather than make up your own. I think that can start to muddy the waters. And at the end of practice, we dedicate rather than make aspirations. It's actually so the first part is setting intentions. The second part is whatever practice it is, if it's a meditation practice or, if you're doing a sadhana practice, and then at the end you dedicate the merit. So because you're engaged in something positive like Buddhist practice, there's merit that is generated from this practice, and we want to consciously say that because of interdependence in the view of Buddhism, right, dependent arising, the fact that all beings are part of the same whole, we want to acknowledge that it's our hope that this merit is for the benefit of all beings, not just ourselves.
It's also the only hope. I mean, the reason why we are in samsara and experiencing suffering most of the time, with tiny little periods of where we seek pleasure and get tiny little gratifications, morsels of gratifications, using something like the four immeasurables is at least a basis for momentarily overcoming that mind of self-grasping, which is the samsaric engine. The samsaric engine, the cause and conditions of suffering, present, past, and future, is self-grasping. So when we say, may all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness, we step out of that mind of self-grasping and for a moment start to realize that if we don't want this and be the creator and recipient of suffering all the time endlessly, we need to step into a different mind. We need to step into a much more infinite, broad, positive mind of loving kindness. And, if we want to create conditions, good conditions even for ourselves, it means we have to create good conditions for everyone else. Because whatever we do creates the causes and conditions. That's what interdependence means. So if we want happiness, we definitely have to step into the mind of loving kindness. And then the mind of equanimity, which is maybe one of the more difficult lines in the four immeasurables, is to understand that, suffering, pleasure, what we call good and bad should be equalized, because it is based on these choices of attachment and aversion is where all the pain and the friction between those two sides is created through ignorance. So, and of course it also speaks to equalizing, that all beings are equalized in this moment of liberation and attainment of their Buddha nature, where I, myself, and all beings, because when I say may all beings, I'm included, that they pass through and beyond the state of sorrow. So yes, of course, we need to memorize certain kinds of things because we are conditioned only to think about ourselves and what's good and what's in it for me. But that's the very mind that is the creator of all the suffering that we have all the time. And we need, in Buddhism, we talk about two things, wisdom and method. So we need to have the wisdom to understand we need to step out of this mind that causes suffering, and we need the method. And the method is bringing to mind something like the four immeasurables. Desiring happiness for all beings is the method that is informed by the wisdom of how to step out of this conditioned cyclical existence of suffering. So they're very potent tools and wisdom combined in order for us to overcome. And we cannot overcome it if we only wish it for ourselves, because when we wish things for ourselves is the reason why we're here to begin with, in the suffering with the body that gets sick and dies. So we do have to step into a Buddha mind, into a great mind, into a mind of great loving kindness, where we create the causes and conditions for all beings, and then we will be included in those causes and conditions for wishing them to pass beyond sorrow.
There's several different questions on finding teachers, recommendations of teachers, books by teachers. So on the Solidago Productions website, which you use to sign into this class, there's a list of teachers that we recommend. As far as engaging in, with a teacher, you should, read different books. There's a wealth of teachings online on YouTube, right? A lot of the teachers have archives of teachings on YouTube. And then the teachers themselves have their own websites and often their own YouTube channels that have lots and lots and lots of teachings. So look at the list that we offered you. If you're on Instagram, which I assume you are, that's how you found this class. There's two great Instagram pages. One is called Pema Lotus, Pemalotus, that has quotes and photos of teachers, some who have passed, some who are alive now and teaching now. And then there's Jangchub Norbu, JANGCHUB.NORBU. And just start to investigate, start to look at these teachers, start to see what resonates, starts to see which ones, you connect with. Go on their websites. They offer often in-person teachings. If you're able to go if it's close by you, or you're able to travel to these teachings and retreats, definitely do it. If not, a lot of them do retreats online, teachings online. And some people talked about resources. A lot of these are sliding scales to pay for them. You can also do some of these live events and retreats by offering to work in exchange for tuition fees. Participate in, you give a few hours every day to, either help prepare food or clean up or, whatever, needs to be maintained during the retreat process. So there's many, many, many options. You have to do the legwork though. And you have to, find, which teachers you connect to, find ways of connecting with them.
Yeah, and please remember, that those locked away, even though all sentient beings have Buddha nature, these remain locked to us until a great master can really help us, with maybe exception of the tiniest, amount of beings. But for most ordinary beings, we really need to be with a master who already has attainment. So please look for signs of that attainment in their view, meditation, and conduct. Look for all those three things. Examine the teacher. We don't want teachers that are like us, schmucks with, afflicted minds. We really want peerless beings. We want beings with wisdom and compassion, and we want to make sure that, they have their mind and their conduct is all about benefiting and helping us. Look for those qualities in your teachers. Don't look for a mirror image of, something that feels accessible and easy. Don't be afraid. Look for a really good teacher with an uninterrupted lineage. Lineage is the blessing, because it's not about someone who takes the Dharma, just interprets it, weaves it into another thing and sells it like it's in a modern package. Do this, but you don't have to do this, and you don't have to do this. Believe me, the Buddhist path, with all of its prescriptions, is the method that has culminated into countless sentient beings attaining full enlightenment. These methods, yes, maybe they will give you temporary benefit, little bit happiness here, a little bit happiness there, but they're never going to be something that can really bring about a huge change. We're speaking about total change, because a Buddhist path is always and only aimed at full enlightenment, at full liberation, liberating self and countless sentient beings. If it's something that's, less than that, it's something else. It's another mundane band-aid. So please look for teachers, qualified masters.
What do you do when a really good idea comes up during meditation, but you choose to return to breath? Do you trust it will come back, or is that a form of attachment grasping? Um, I don't know. I mean, if it's something that's like really important, write it down so you don't forget it. I mean, I don't think you need to, you know, negate a really good idea because you're meditating. It's just um, yeah. I mean, like if you're a writer or something creative and some kind of brilliant thing comes into your mind, maybe write it down and then go back to your practice.
But please be also mindful of distraction. When we sit down to meditate and really look deeply, deeply, into our own reality, into reality of our afflicted mind, into our attachments and things like this, it's exactly the time when we will have all kinds of inclinations to be distracted, because meditation is work, it's diligence, it's, effort. Uh, just make sure to be able to distinguish between distraction and what's really, really important. Meditation and looking at reality is the quintessential important. And most likely when you have some kind of a very important idea, you will remember it. It'll stay with you because of its nature, because it's important. You're not trust your mind not to be like a cup with holes that's going to lose everything.
Um, there's questions about eyes open, closed. One of the reasons practice with eyes open, why it's a good habit, is because a lot of uh, our interaction with the world happens with our eyes open. So to train and getting used to being able to meditate, with eyes open, I think is really valuable.
Also, when you meditate with your eyes open, but you can look, but you're still looking internally. When you're meditating, you're always looking at mind. You can feel those little bubbles rising up of negative emotion, or when a thought passes and it's a negative thought, you get like a little bit of that scent of negativity that is our own thing. And so, with eyes open, when we actually in the physical world encounter a person and these bubbles of negativity start to arise, we know that they come from us, from our side, because we've experienced that in meditation without a presence of an actual, source of, there is no source. Like I was watching a teaching today, Rinpoche said, there is really no outer enemy. No one can harm us directly. That's the key word, directly. Only we harm ourselves directly, because of our likes and dislikes and our afflictions and our attachments and our desires and feeling unsatisfied. But again, to come back to the meditation with the eyes, in your meditation, observe when the thoughts arise, what kind of mood and flavor, so that you can see that flavor arises internally from our own side. And then when you actually have the person in front of you, you can bring your good mind, you can bring your four immeasurables mind, you can bring your Tonglen mind into the game, instead of thinking and believing what is really the cause of ignorance, just to think things are like that, and whatever arises and affects me is real. That's ignorance. That's ignorance. That's the cause of all the suffering. So meditating with the eyes open allows us to experience how negativity arises in our mind, and then is projected to others. That's what we get when we meditate. We get a chance to observe that.
Also, some of you asking about practice during the day and throughout the day, what are some things you can do? This kind of mind training, you know, you're creating a type of awareness that you want to bring into life in general. You know what I mean? So you're not just emotionally, reacting to this, you're not just reacting to these emotions as they come and take you over and sweep you away. You're not just kind of defaulting into certain judgments and certain, views that you've cultivated over time, that you're creating spaciousness in the mind. So it's not just about sitting for 10 minutes. It's about cultivating this awareness that you could bring into all um, aspects of your life all the time.
And in meditation is where you get to see the empty nature of afflictive emotions. When anger arises, you use your mind, sharpness of your mind, and say, where is this anger? What is this anger? And, anger will cease when the mind looks at it. When the force of the sun is turned into this dark spot. But at the same time, even though anger will be gone, clarity of the mind will stay. The sharpness will stay, will remain. And so we're making our mind pliable by looking and examining the nature of our emotions and our afflictions and our judgments and projections. And that's what we want to bring into the world. We're only sitting on the cushion so we can take it to everything and apply it here.
Someone asked about somebody they know took their own life, and they were doing Tonglen for them, if there's any other practices they could do. One good thing you could do when people pass, um, a lot of the Buddhist monasteries do something called puja, which are cycles of various prayers. And one that we use often is Kopan, Kopan monastery, which was Lama Zopa Rinpoche's, which is Lama Zopa Rinpoche's monastery in Kathmandu, Nepal, Kopan Monastery. And you go on their website and they offer a bunch of pujas for different, for some for the living, some for the dead, and for some for illness, some for, removing obstacles, all kinds of things. And and you can order for specific people. That's always something very valuable and helpful, and something you can do.
But Tonglen is an incredible practice because you are taking away the causes that brought upon this kind of activity. You're taking away the anger, the frustration, all this kind of negativity, emotional negativity, and ultimately kind of like this, mind that didn't get to see through it, through the empty nature of these emotions, or, was not able to hold up through the difficulties, which are karmic things. Taking that upon yourself and purifying that through Tonglen is an incredible help to the deceased person, and also incredible merit and practice for you.
I often hear about renunciation of self and ideas of self. I'm into climbing currently, and have found it's made my life better. It's become a big part of my identity. Renouncing ideas like this seems difficult. Um, you know, when you talk about renunciation, you're really renunciating the attachment, right? So climbing is great if it's something you enjoy, it's a good exercise, it's a way to be out in nature. You don't have to renounce climbing because, it's something you feel, it's not about renouncing everything because you feel like it's an aspect of yourself. It's like it's not necessarily your identity, it's your attachment to this as your identity. If you know, that's where it's getting confused. If you just enjoy it as something, you know, that's totally fine. I'm not quite sure what the problem is, you know. If it's becoming a part of your identity to where you neglect other things that are important or that rely on you or something, or neglect, you know, progressing on a spiritual path if that's important to you. But when you talk about renunciation of self, it's not like we're saying, you know, we're not going to do anything. You know, you're still here, you're still engaged in this world, and there's still things that we're going to do as human beings. It's more about being attached to certain ideas that, you know, prevent us from seeing this view of Buddhism that we were talking about, that Victoria went into so much about, you know, interdependence, you know, and things like that. When we start to just see ourselves isolated from everything else and existing on the islands, that like that's the type of, you know,
Ignorance.
view of self that we have to, you know, renunciate and say, no, I'm, you know, I'm going to move beyond that.
Yeah, because that's really ignorance, you know, that's why we talk about reality, which is knowable by our mind directly, inferentially and directly in meditation. Interdependent reality, you know, this island on oneself is just ignorance. And from that ignorance arise all kinds of things. It's like very solidified sense of self and very solidified sense of other. And the other often is perceived as a threat, as an enemy, as a this, as a that, etc., like target for all of our negative emotions. But really, as Michael said, you know, and the teachings say very, very clearly, it's not the objects that bind us, it's the attachments that bind us. You know, the same thing as the attachment to the self, like I am this, I am that, solidifying this self. We should examine that very, very thoroughly in meditation, not just as a conceptual, you know, another concept here and there, this intellectual pleasure that we, you know, we intellectually know. You know, our intellect is a, you know, it's a first grade tool. I mean, it's good for certain things, unquestionably, you know, for producing, you know, warm clothes and, you know, street lights and etc. It's really not the Hubble telescope of the mind. So, like, you know, this coupled identities that we create for ourselves, just to know that that's what it is. It's a conglomerate of things that I hold together with my mind, you know, moment to moment. I focus on holding this pile of things together. I am this, I am this, I am that, I'm this, I can do this, you know, and etc. Just hold it, but hold it, you know, in a medium thing, you know, not too tightly, you know, and also know that from this place, you know, you have options. You could have options of virtue and non-virtue. It's not about this whole renunciation. Renouncing what? You know, you have to be very clear about what you're renouncing and, you know, what there is really to renounce. And, you know, not forgetting, of course, that, you know, it's about virtue and non-virtue. It's about, you know, being in the world where we bring about benefit to others and exercise mind of bodhicitta, mind of compassion, and mind of wisdom, really knowing that these clubbed together senses of identity are nothing but that. They're just like ideas held together by our mind and habitual patterns. They're not way more than that. So being soft with all of that, you know, we don't need to hold to our identity tightly. We've had countless lives with many, many kinds of identities. Our identities can also shift on a dime. We're in a car accident, and tomorrow we start to live a completely different life because our mind shifted just like that. So these identities, you know, it's soft, holding it softly, and making sure that they're virtuous identities, that our activities manifest in virtuous ways based on wisdom and not on holding to identity. Holding to identity does not give us wisdom. Wisdom arises as a result of meditation, view, meditation, and conduct. Understanding the view, understanding reality by using the tool of meditation is what gives us good conduct. Holding on to ideas and concepts, very, very tightly, it's kind of useless.
Okay, we're going to dedicate the merit from today's class to the benefit of all beings by saying our dedication prayer. By this merit, may all beings attain the state of enlightenment and conquer the enemies of faults and delusions. May they be liberated from this ocean of samsara and its pounding waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. And thank you.
Thank you all.
Nick Solidio, our producer.
Thank you, Nick.
We appreciate it. See you next time.
Practice.